In 1975, in Florence, Italy, and Medici Sanctuary Exhibition Hall chief Paolo Dolpa Gatto has an issue. As per the Washington Post, the foundation sees more than 500,000 guests every year, except the main exit and entry are near one another in a confined hall. So the chief is chasing after an elective way out. He moves an old household item in his chase after additional room. Unexpectedly, this uncovers a secret entryway set in the floor, and opening it uncovers a secret money that will bewilder the world. The man just barely got through this church's last hidden entrance and tracked down a secret room of failed-to-remember mysteries. But before we get started, hit that subscribe button and become a part of our community of like-minded individuals who love history facts. Let's get started. Dolpa Gatto had been in a little room of vestry simply off the fundamental church when he made his disclosure. Had been moving different household items just to see whether there was any chance of making an exit from this humble chamber. In any case, it was the point at which the master shoved aside an old closet that he recognized the wooden hidden entryway. The gallery chief shoved one old closet in the vestry to the side, and that is the point at which he detected the baffling secret entryway. It appears to be this little entry set in the floor had been completely disregarded throughout the long term. Pulling it open, Dolpa Gatto saw a lofty flight of stairs driving down into the despair, and as should have been obvious, the space was loaded up with garbage. It appears to be that this neglected chamber hadn't been utilized for exactly 20 years. Beforehand, it had filled in as a store for charcoal, which energized the crude warming arrangement of graziers. Then in November 1966, the stream Arno, which moves through Florence, overflowed with destroying outcomes. The lethal waters arrived at levels of up to 20 feet and killed 101 of the city's individuals, as indicated by the sight into Florence. The Basilica di San Lorenzo is a congregation of the Medici family that additionally incorporates Michelangelo's new sacristy and that puzzling chamber under the hidden entrance. Unfortunately, the congregation is one of the spots that was deluged by the flood. The structure and the sacristy were subsequently tidied up, yet this little room had essentially been quieted down underneath its secret entrance. This entry was then clearly covered by the closet in the vestry. He concluded that this perplexing room underneath the historical center was worth further examination. So the chief set about getting it out, and he likewise started to strip wash that covered the walls. Furthermore, what arose late night of careful cleaning was genuinely surprising. It worked out that this secret chamber had an immediate pertinence to the breathtaking burial places of the drugs that lay previously. In any case, who were these Medicis? This family with the abundance to make these magnificent burial places, executed by one of the main craftsmen of the day. Well, the place of metallurgy originally came to unmistakable quality in the city territory of Florence in the 1300 years because of its banking and business tasks. Yet it was in the 15th century that the Medici family rose as a main power and lender behind the Renaissance. The Renaissance, which can be deciphered as the resurrection, was a period when workmanship and culture bloomed in Europe. Extraordinary craftsmen, for example, Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, had the option to thrive during this period with the support of affluent benefactors remembering the Medicis for 1434. Kosovo, Dominici rose to control in the city province of Florence, and he was the one who aided make Florence the critical area for the production of the Renaissance. The Medicis proceeded to create for popes and stayed in ability to be dealt with up until 1737. That year, the remainder of the Medici sovereigns tragically passed on without having delivered a male inheritor. That implied the place of Medici strength had reached a conclusion. Yet let's wind the clock back a piece to when Michelangelo was charged to make the new sacristy in the Basilica di San Lorenzo. The Basilica di San Lorenzo was implicit the 1500 years and was fundamentally the Medicis church situated in the focal point of Florence. So the Medicis, specifically Cardinal Giulio, were significant benefactors for Michelangelo. Yet, working for influential men can have its confusions, particularly when those characters have political power. What's more, soon, occasions in Rome took a turn for the startling when a well-known revolt cut down the Medicis in 1527. Rome was overwhelmed by the threatening powers of the heavenly Roman head Charles V, and the timeless city was sacked in the midst of much passing and obliteration. Pope Forbearing VII, who you'll recall was only Cardinal Giulio Domenici, when he charged Michelangelo to assemble the new sacristy, and Florence had to escape. The disorder gushed out over into Florence to the apparently. Following occasions in Rome, individuals of Florence ascended against a place of metallurgy, and what he should have later viewed as an imprudent move Michelangelo threw in his parcel with the dissidents who had established a republic. He even ventured to assist them with fortifying the fortresses of Florence. However, the aggression between Pope Lenient VII and head Charles V didn't stand the test of time, and by 1529, the two were accommodated. However, that was not uplifting news for the conservatives of Florence or for Michelangelo. The Pope and the sovereign are presently consolidated powers and laid attack to Florence, where Michelangelo had been attempting to work on the city's safeguards. Forgiving and not entirely settled to reestablish the Medicis' control over Florence, it required a multi-month attack to accomplish this. However, they ultimately succeeded. This implied risk for Michelangelo's, since he had double-crossed his previous metallurgy benefactors, so there was just something single for it. He needed to crawl under a rock. As his bolt opening, Michelangelo obviously picked the chamber underneath the secret entrance set in the floor of the new sacristy, which he had himself planned. Also, that is the very thing that Dal Pigneto had coincidentally found in 1975. When he valued open the pivot entryway, the master was gazing down into the very room where Michelangelo had concealed for a considerable length of time. Anyway, what Dol Pigneto came to accept. His conviction was hugely supported by what he found on the walls of the straightforward chamber, which estimates around 23 feet in length and a piece under 7 feet across. As per NPR, not precisely an open bolt hole to go through months secluded in is it, however, it was what Michelangelo got up to during his self-inflicted detainment that captivated Dol Pigneto. The last option in his conservator spent numerous hours meticulously eliminating 2 layers of messy whitewash from the walls of the chamber with surgical blades, and what arose was astounding. When that covering had been taken out, the Washington Post reports that an immense assortment of nearly 180 drawings recorded straightforwardly onto the walls arose. Additionally, Donald Blyhetto accepted that in any event some of them were from the hand of Michelangelo himself. For any exhibition hall chief, this was a truly mind-blowing find, beforehand concealed works by one of the experts of the Renaissance. Dol Pigneto figured that 97 of these wall drawings were really executed by Michelangelo, as per a 1979 article in the paper. The others, in the interim, were most likely portrayed by the specialists, understudies, or collaborators. These drawings by Michelangelo were particularly significant due to their scale. Surprisingly, a considerable lot of these works were life-size, or significantly bigger. The size of these drawings on the chamber walls made them extraordinarily inquisitive. During his functioning life, it appears to be that Michelangelo had constantly obliterated a large portion of his working representations. Those that have endured are moderately little and scratched on leaves of paper that are something like 20 crawls in size, as per the Washington Post, and what the drawings addressed made them all the seriously captivating. Obviously, they had been executed in sienna, red-colored pencil, and charcoal. The pieces likewise had all the earmarks of being fundamental representations for works that Michelangelo was currently making. One particularly fascinating drawing seemed to be an early draft of work the extraordinary craftsman would later execute on the Sistine House of Prayer walls at the Vatican City in Rome. That's right, these were the preliminary drawings of a virtuoso. Some portrayals seem to be plans for the Laurentian Library, which Michelangelo planned and enriched in one more piece of Florence's Basilica di San Lorenzo. D'Agostino proceeded to portray a particularly captivating representation of a sculpture from old times called the Lacuna. The sculpture was found in Rome in 1506, a year that Michelangelo was in the city. It depicts an assault via ocean snakes on a Trojan minister and his children, which is a scene from old-style folklore. D'Agostino made sense of. Michelangelo was fixated similar to the wide range of various artists of the times, since it was the manifestation of development and profound articulation in mold. Dal Pigneto continued on from his directorship of the Medici Sanctuary Exhibition Hall in 1979, and unfortunately kicked the bucket matured 83 for a really long time later, in 2017. His previous post was held by Monica Biddy. She supported up Dolpa Ghetto's story of an unfortunate Michelangelo, who was constrained into concealing by the arrival of the Medicis. Biddy told Public Geographic and 2017 normally, Michelangelo was apprehensive and he chose to remain in the room and discussing his time in the mystery room. Biddy added Michelangelo was a virtuoso. How might he at any point respond there? Simply draw. So we have an incredible story. The specialists committed an error by supporting the Florentine conservatives against his benefactors, the Medicis. It was a blunder on the grounds that the medications returned thundering in 1530, only 3 years after they'd been removed. Presently, any individual who had upheld those gone against a federal health insurance rule was plainly defenseless against the family's retaliation, and apprehensive Michelangelo had to find a concealing spot to get away from the rage of the Medicis. What's more, since he'd been working in the new sacristy of the Basilica di San Lorenzo, he would have been totally acquainted with the chamber concealed underneath a secret entryway. What's more, that was the entry that Dal Pigneto coincidentally found in 1975, almost 500 years before Donald Paquette Goodness. Fortunate find Michelangelo had dug in that mystery space for 2 or 3 months. Yet, how did the extraordinary craftsman relax trapped in his confined quarters? Well, he drew on the actual walls of what was successfully his prison cell. In doing so, he made an entrancing series of fundamental representations for work he would later execute. However, not every person purchases this story. William Wallace of Washington College in St. Louis, Missouri, has made a trip to Florence to concentrate on the drawings under the new sacristy. Addressing NPR in 2018, he said, "I think perhaps not exactly about 6 might actually be by Michelangelo. Obviously, that is a perceptibly more moderate evaluation than that initially made by Dal Pigneto." Wallace told Public Geographic in 2018 that a considerable lot of the representations could have been drawn by partners as opposed to the expert himself, and attempting to figure out what could really be a work straightforwardly owing to Michelangelo himself was no simple undertaking. Wallace noticed isolating one from the other is extremely difficult. Wallace likewise questioned that a man of Michelangelo's remaining inside Florence would have been compelled to conceal in this grimy chamber underneath the new sacristy. After all, couldn't the specialists have gone to one of his other well-off benefactors? Wallace likewise thinks that these portrayals might have been drawn before the time that the Medicis got back to Florence in 1530. He figures they might have been drawn before during the 1520s when Michelangelo and his associates were dealing with the new sacristy. The Wallace brought up that whoever made these portrayals, they are an intriguing and instructive expansion as far as anyone is concerned of Renaissance workmanship. As he brought up to NPR, it's a brief look into something of the way of life of the time. That is all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.